In this video, we introduce fast iterative development with OpenLiberty Dev Mode and containers. Dev Mode for OpenLiberty helps to boost developer productivity. One of its core features is iterative development. This allows you to quickly make changes and test out your code without having to rebuild your application. From any text editor or IDE, simply save your changes and your code will be automatically hot deployed to the running server. In addition to hot deployments, Dev Mode also features on-demand testing, where you can run unit tests or integration tests at any time, and on-demand debugging, where you can attach a debugger to step through your code. Now let's look at containers. Why would you want to develop with containers? Well, if you're running containers in production, ideally you would want to use them in development as well. One of the reasons is that certain production issues can be avoided by keeping your development and production environments as similar as possible. By using containers, you can codify your environment for consistency between development and production. And the goal is to be able to develop, test, and debug your application on production-like environments. To help with this, we're introducing container support for Dev Mode. This lets you develop your applications with the OpenLiberty server running in a container. You can automatically redeploy your changes to the running server, which is in the container, and perform on-demand testing and debugging while connecting to the container. Let's take a look. In this project, I have a sample application. There are some Java files, some Liberty configuration files, build file, and a Docker file. In the build file, all you need to do is enable the latest milestone of the Liberty Maven plugin in order to use Dev Mode with containers. This is the Docker file for this application. Notice it's using one of the OpenLiberty images as a parent image, and all it's doing, aside from that, is copying some configuration files into the config folder and copying the application itself into the applications folder for the container. While this is a simple example, you can add other things that you need for your application, for example, database drivers and so on. And this Docker file is intended to be usable for both development and production, without having to make changes when moving between them. To start Dev Mode with container support, run the maven liberty dev c command. In this demo, I'm showing this feature being used with Maven, but you can also use this feature with Gradle. Once the server is up, access the endpoint, and you'll see that the endpoint is not found because the corresponding feature hasn't been enabled yet. So we can go into the Liberty configuration in the server XML file and add the np health feature for this example. When we save the file, you see that the feature has been updated on the server, and you can refresh the endpoint and see that the endpoint now works. Notice that the server picked up the change without me having to rebuild or restart the container. Now let's look at adding a Java file. You can add a Java file in our source code and save the changes, and you'll see that the source code is compiled, the server picks up the changes in the container, and again, no rebuild or restarting of the container was necessary. Refresh the page, and you see that the new code has taken effect. So that's hot deployment. Let's move on to the next feature of Dev Mode, which is on-demand testing. Simply press enter at any time in the terminal to run any unit test or integration test that you've configured for your project. When the tests run, they connect to the server that's running in the container. Or if you want more instant feedback for your changes, start Dev Mode with the hot test parameter, which will cause the test to be run right after Dev Mode starts up and whenever you make any changes to your source code. And finally, let's look at debugging. You can set a breakpoint in your code, configure your debugger in your IDE to attach to the default port, which is 7777, and run the debugger. When you hit the endpoints, you see that the server pauses at your breakpoints, allowing you to step through your code. When you're done, press Ctrl+C to quit Dev Mode. Container support for Dev Mode is available right now as a tech preview. We invite you to try it out and let us know what you think so that we can make it even more useful for your development scenarios. For more information on OpenLiberty, visit openliberty.io.